Take your favorite series. Try to see something 100% original about it. Something completely unique. No quality stemming from anything else. No inspirations, nothing. That's pretty much impossible, because when you look deeper you see that everything has some sort of precursor. Everything stems from something else. Apples come from trees, trees come from seeds, and seeds come from apples. Every single person who was ever born was made from a sperm and an egg. Every thought that you've ever had and every action that you've ever taken has really been a reaction to circumstances and situations that you've been placed in. There's no such thing as a self-made anyone. Even right now, if you try your hardest to think up an original thought, it's invalidated by the fact that I put that idea in your head. I say, don't think of a polar bear, and now you're thinking about a polar bear. That's just the way we as human beings work. Nothing exists in a vacuum. We need stimulation from the world around us. If you were to raise a baby in complete social isolation with zero stimulation, they'd either be dead or completely feral, with no idea of how to behave as a human being, and it's no different for you or me. My point is that the same thing applies to stories as well. A good story's foundations lie within the writer's thoughts and experiences, and when you read between the lines, you can see reflections of them, where they were put there consciously or subconsciously. It is absolutely impossible to make something from nothing. Originality is dead. In fact, it was never alive to begin with. Even looking back to the oldest stories, mythologies, when a bolt of lightning flies down from the sky and burns down your house, there's no other way to explain it for them besides, maybe I angered Zeus, or Thor, or Raiden. I mean, how many gods of thunder are out there? Well, probably at least one per polytheistic religion, but you know what I mean. The concept is not original. It's of my opinion that nothing is truly original, but I don't think that's a bad thing, because originality is not a mark of quality. Originality is just novelty, and being unique doesn't mean anything if you're not good for something. It's better to focus on the execution rather than the concept, because even if you do make something completely new, even if you make some never-before-seen trope, now it's seen, and someone else can take that trope and do it way better than you, because the first draft of something is always the roughest. Refining what's already there is much more practical and often has a much better result. That's why I think unoriginal is an overused complaint. I think when people say that, they really mean uninspired, lazy, and those are totally valid complaints. But I think what matters most is how fresh it is compared to everything else. I'm going to use Star Wars as an example. So when you release something new, you have to look at the scene around you. If you make a sci-fi or space opera film today, you'll instantly be compared to Star Wars. You might be called unoriginal simply for being in the same genre, or just being set in space in general. That's not to say you can't pursue making your story, but Star Wars has such a huge cultural footprint that no matter what, you'll be competing with it to stay in the minds of people. But before I get ahead of myself, let's look at Star Wars itself. Is it original?
No.
Star Wars is another story using the philosophy of the hero's journey, something that George Lucas did very deliberately. The hero's journey is the template for most stories that you've probably seen in your life, particularly the fairy tales. And what most people don't get about Star Wars is that it's not a sci-fi story. Star Wars is supposed to be a fantasy story set in space. It focuses more on mystical elements rather than technical elements, which is the difference between it and something like Star Trek. To explain the hero's journey, it goes like this. Our hero starts off in an ordinary or mundane world. The hero receives a call to adventure and has to leave behind this world to go into an unordinary world. They gain allies, they face trials and tribulations, they are pushed to the brink and hit rock bottom, undergoing a spiritual death and rebirth. Then they learn a lesson and use it to emerge victoriously, and then they return transformed. When you think about it, that's most stories in a nutshell. A setup, a confrontation, and a resolution, the 3-act structure. It's just a vehicle for change, development, maturity, That's the oldest story mankind has ever known. And then you could look at it from a reductionist standpoint.
Duh, every story is boring. Every story is exactly the same.
It was time for Thomas to leave. He had seen everything.
You have to look deeper than just the surface level. To truly appreciate something, you have to constructively break it down when you're analyzing it. So, let me continue to break down Star Wars.
Oh, seriously? I'm gonna blow it up? The whole stinking thing?
What makes Star Wars Star Wars? Well, if its story structure isn't original, let's look at its other elements. Well, it's not the settings. George Lucas did not invent space, spaceships, deserts, swamps, or even floating cities. It's certainly not the factions. Evil empires weren't invented by George Lucas, rebels weren't invented by George Lucas, neither were the concept of scrappy underdog heroes in general. The Jedi are like warrior monks or samurai, while the Sith are just evil versions of them. The term stormtrooper is pulled right from Germany, and they're made to look almost like skulls.
George wanted to create these sort of iconic imagery that look like living skeletons, and that's why you have the stark black and white.
Even looking at the aesthetic choices, the opening title crawl is pulled straight from Flash Gordon.
Chapter 2. Following the wake of dictators, war, and rumors of war, a ravaging plague, the Purple Death, strikes the earth.
The famous wipe transition was pulled from Akira Kurosawa, a classic Japanese film director. Other elements were also pulled from Kurosawa's stories. Besides the aforementioned samurai aspect, George Lucas also took some story beats. For example, A New Hope starts off with two bickering droids escaping a battle, while The Hidden Fortress starts off with two bickering peasants escaping a battle. Not to mention the fact that there's a princess recruiting the help of an old war hero to help her against an evil force trying to destroy her and her people. Now, am I calling George Lucas some untalented hack?
Oh, I don't think so.
The reason I think Star Wars was so good, especially if you compare it to the sequel trilogy.
But we've got almost enough evaporators to make the place pay off. I have to stay one more season. I can't leave him now.
What good's all your uncle's work if the Empire takes it over? You know they've already started to nationalize commerce in the Central Systems?
Is that they were inspired. And they were inspired in a more genuine way. The original trilogy of Star Wars took a huge variety of inspirations from multiple projects, multiple films, multiple books, while with the sequel trilogy, it commits what I call inspirational cannibalism. Don't get me wrong, when the fans make a project of something, they can do just as good or even better than the original creators can. Just look at Sonic Mania, or pretty much any Pokemon fan game. Blame Disney all you want, but at the end of the day, the sequel trilogy was made by people who grew up on Star Wars. And while they might have liked Star Wars, they didn't really understand it at its core. Star Wars is not good because of the lightsabers, or the blasters, or the starships, or the stormtroopers. What makes a story good is how they take all these elements and use them together to convey themes, and messages, and emotion. The sequels just took the surface level details. They saw it as an equation, as something you could quantify. But more than anything, I believe that writing is a spiritual experience. It's not just about the concept, it's about the execution. I genuinely believe that if you're a good enough writer, and you're also passionate about collecting vintage soda bottles, you could make me cry over the death of a New York seltzer if you really tried. I mean, the Brave Little Toaster exists, why not? Maybe it sounds like a dumb idea, but compare that to releasing another superhero film. In this day and age, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the modern day mythology. Superheroes have already been attacked, celebrated, deconstructed, reconstructed. I mean, what can you add to this current trend? Another evil Superman? You might as well loop back around and make a good Superman, because that's the extraordinary story in this market. It's all a cycle. No matter how much time and effort you put into your project, If you just follow the current trend, you're very likely to just be unremarkable. I'll take a page from a book called Manga in Theory and Practice, written by Hirohiko Araki, creator of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. When he was younger, he participated in a contest for the Tezuka Awards, where young and upcoming artists for Shonen Jump would submit one-shots and have them judged. As you'd probably know, manga and anime can be very derivative, usually consisting of young men discovering they have superpowers and they have to save the world. Instead of doing something like that, Araki made a story about cowboys playing poker, and Poker Under Arms, or Buso Poker, ended up winning runner-up. Osamu Tezuka, aka the god of manga, who the awards were named after, praised Poker Under Arms. But he didn't talk about how original it was or how fresh it was. He talked about how it had good quality, about how it had good composition. I believe that the unique setting and subject matter certainly does get his foot into the door, but his writing talent carries him the rest of the way. And if you don't believe me, try to find Poker Under Arms and read it for yourself. It's honestly a really good story. It's very short, only 31 pages, and you'll see what I mean when you start reading it. In Araki's works, he focuses on intrigue. It's like each page is a cliffhanger and you have to keep turning and turning until you reach the end, so that you get answers to all the questions that you're asking. That's why Poker Under Arms was good, not because it was original. And it's not even original anyway, it just took different inspirations than what it was going up against. You probably know the term weeaboo, a weirdo obsessed with Japanese culture. Well, Araki is a Westaboo, a Japanese person obsessed with Western culture. By his own admission, he said he made Poker Under Arms because he loved Clint Eastwood movies. Even looking at his magnum opus, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it has the same influences. It's not original either. It's widely known that characters and their abilities are named after Western pop and rock. This is just another example of a creator taking inspiration from the things that they love and blending it all together into making something new. If you want to make something and you want to be original, my first piece of advice is to throw away the notion that originality is a thing, because it's not. My second piece of advice is to find an inspiration. Find a muse, and then find another one, and another one, and another one. Keep going until you can fit everything you love into a box. Then find a way to combine those things coherently. Don't just take a bunch of things and make something you think is cool. Try to do something that really conveys how you feel, or how you want other people to feel. When you're writing, there's lots of mistakes you can make, lots of pitfalls you can find yourself trapped in, there's lots of don'ts. But the caveat to that is that there's no do's. There's no right way for you to do anything.
He said it! He said it!
As long as you get across what you're trying to say, you've succeeded. But the first step is, you have to have something to say, and only you can figure that out. You have to look within yourself and find something that you're passionate about, something that you care about, and just share it with others. That's where every writer starts.
I have beautiful, pristine yellow tablets, ready to go. Nice fresh blocks of pencils. All set. All I need is an idea.